This will provide you all the information on all the work that we have been doing for the technology facilitation mechanism. Up to now, we have already trained around 500 participants in 90 countries, of which more than half, 53%, are females. Before starting, I would like to give you some technical guidelines regarding the Zoom meetings and Mentimeter. First, if you are not speaking, switch your microphone and camera off, please. When you are invited to speak, we will split, then you can mute yourself on and switch the camera on. But please keep the camera off and the microphone off during the session. Once you want to take the floor, please click the reaction button and raise your hand. At that stage, once you are invited to speak, you can unmute yourself and click your camera on. If you have an issue, a question, a comment, please raise it in the chat. The chat is permanently followed, so we will be able to react immediately if necessary to the chat. And if you need translation into French, please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen, and then you will have options for both English and French should you need interpretation. Yesterday you were engaged with Mentimeter. We will have also Mentimeter today. During the session, there will be a couple of questions really, more than regarding the session itself. As you probably already experimented yesterday, the link to the Mentimeter questions will be put in the chat. You just have to click on it, and you will be transferred to a different web page, which will then guide you to the questions and the answers. Having said this, I would like to now ask our colleagues from GIZ and from IATT, who will begin the session with some opening remarks. Magnus, please, you can start now.
Very briefly, yesterday we had a great session, good participation and excellent discussions. I would like to encourage everyone participating today to do the same for this session. We're monitoring the chat and we will try to address as many of your comments and your questions during the actual session. In order to save time and to make things shorter, Ludo, back to you, and everyone have a great session. Thank you for participating. And everyone have a great session. Thank you for participating.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let me continue now and set up what we're going to discuss today. In session 1 yesterday, we discussed a bit about how the system of science, technology, innovation work. What we essentially said yesterday is that you have to look, when you look at science, technology, innovation issues, you have to look at the whole system involving organizations, involving actors, involving structures, involving interrelationships, and involving flows of information. It was also said yesterday that you have to ensure that as many of the actors involved participate in it, because the more open the flow of information, the more effectively a system will work. We also said yesterday that we should consider the indigenous and traditional knowledge systems of knowledge, subsystems of knowledge, which should be part of the overall system, because indigenous and traditional knowledge has an immense contribution to make to the overall workings of the system. Finally, we said that the whole purpose of the system is to build a common understanding and a common knowledge that is shared across the system. And in order to ensure that that is well used, we have to monitor and evaluate continuously the system. Today in this session, we move to one of the most important drivers of the system. And we're talking about entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is perhaps one of the most important drivers of innovation. The session today will focus first on the conceptual issues related to innovative entrepreneurship. We will then move to address some of the regional experiences in strengthening domestic economic systems for innovative entrepreneurship. We will have a discussion there about them. Then UNIDO will present some of their experiences in terms of fostering innovative entrepreneurship. After, we will have another discussion, and I will wrap up with some summary points. To present this, we have a fantastic set of speakers today. We have Fernando Santiago. Fernando Santiago is an industrial policy officer specialized in research and policy advisory services to UNIDO member states. He is the focal point of UNIDO with the interagency task team and a member of the scientific board of the Latin American Network for the Study of Learning Systems, Innovation and Competency Building, LALIX. We also have Nivali Levy, who's the Chief of Innovation Section at UN-IATT. She's a senior policy expert in digital transformation, innovation, and technology for sustainable development. And she's currently leading the ESQA initiative on open innovative government and the Digital Arabic Content Award. Our third speaker today is Alexei Stavaraso, who is an industrial development officer at UNIDO, also in charge of digital transformation and artificial intelligence strategies, and specialized in the promotion of fourth industrial revolution technologies and associated technologies. In the background, you see the pictures of Segmei Wan from UNESCO, Angela Sarsina from the European Community Joint Research Center, and Sabrine Ben Brick from GIZ. Also, unfortunately, we don't have the picture of Cristina Mentodu from UNESCO, all of which are supporting us with the Mentimeter, with the technical aspects of this seminar. This is a team that you will have in front of you today, and I will now try to move on to Fernando, who's going to give us the first presentation of the afternoon. Fernando, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludovico. Thank you very much for the presentation. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon from Vienna, of course. And I'm very happy to be with you today. As Ludovico mentioned, we will move now to one of the cases very important, particularly, I guess, for your region, this issue of entrepreneurship, and particularly the idea of innovative entrepreneurship. Not all entrepreneurial activities have the same impact, and we recognize the value of different ways of doing or approaching to sort of business creation, business development. But in particular, because of the nature of the problems that we are facing, and the topics here, we're going to focus on what do we mean, or what it is that we mean by innovative entrepreneurship. So let me just start by saying that innovation and entrepreneurship are usually two sides of the same coin, right? So innovation allows application of new knowledge or significantly improved solutions, sometimes using technology, sometimes use knowledge, but it's just there is a demand in the market, and there is someone who finds an opportunity to apply something that is relevant to create value. And of course, these people are called entrepreneurs, right? They find opportunities to create business and then mobilize. But of course, it's not the same to have an opportunity because you have the capacity, because your knowledge or your abilities. But sometimes some entrepreneurial activities are really responding more to needs, right? Some people who cannot find a job or who have difficulty identifying a sort of a source of income, and then they are forced to go for entrepreneurial activities. So of course, under the right conditions, entrepreneurship creates jobs, contributes to productivity, economic growth, and to sort of poverty reduction and some formalization of firms. But that's not necessarily always the case. But of course, when we introduce the idea of the SDGs, this idea that this technology and entrepreneurship and innovation entrepreneurship to address certain needs, right? So the idea here is that this is a dynamics of creation, of wealth creation, not just creating some survival opportunities. Really, really go further in the idea of creating something that a new product, new service, production methods or business models where the idea of or the possibilities for a firm to grow, the possibilities of creating wealth or adding value-added jobs, it's increasing, and this is a driver of economic and societal benefits, right? And let me stress this idea of economic and societal benefits because it's a distinction that we will discuss later on. But this is happening at a local level, regional level, at different levels within the economy. So there is sort of some difference between the traditional ways of understanding entrepreneurship as something that's more of a survival activity and something that is more innovative, is that of course the special type of people, right? Those people who have abilities to target very specific opportunities, to mobilize, say, for example, application of research, of knowledge, application of advanced technologies to certain needs. Those many people have some academic training or some substantive professional experience. The balance between education and autonomy is sort of the more you have opportunities to create these business opportunities by mobilizing knowledge is what sort of makes a distinction. But also, these people are not isolated normally. So they also work in networks. They come in clusters. They find these sort of networking opportunities as sort of a way to transfer technology and knowledge, but also to learn about the markets, to learn about qualified jobs, to find resources, either financial or the other nature, right? But also supporting institutions. So it really, this is a very dynamic set of agents rather than introduce some dynamic to the economy to create jobs, but also to foster growth. But in the context of the SDGs, the agenda that we are discussing today, this connection between entrepreneurship and innovation is very present. I mean, since 2012 or so, I mean, some of the discussions and deliberations that the General Assembly had developed, resolutions in which entrepreneurship is recognized as one of the means to achieve the SDGs. Also to address particularly some economic challenges and social environmental matters, poverty and employment, and some of the SDGs like the SDG 4, and SDG 8, for example, or even 9, they include specific targets or specific goals that are related to entrepreneurship and innovation, right? And so, of course, SDG 9, it's all about innovation and the ways, the drivers of innovation and entrepreneurship, of course, one of the very important for them. So these are very important elements for the achievement of the 2030 Development Agenda. But, how do we find this? I mean, how does the entrepreneurship and innovation address some of this? And you were, yesterday, we were discussing some of the issues in terms of, balancing, when the SDGs become sort of a driver or some kind of reference for these activities. Of course, what we have in mind is, of course, economic opportunities, economic growth, but also social and environmental objectives. We want to create employment, but it's not just employment as a sort of a generic category. We want to make also sure that employment for some of the least favored groups, societal groups, are also benefited and also part of these dynamics, right? And so social businesses or social entrepreneurs become very important here. So this idea that, expressing the transformational power of innovative entrepreneurship, right? in the sense of these activities have the ability to transform ways of doing things from something that, is perhaps limited from some groups to more generic or more generalizable benefits, right? And these ideas, I think we discussed yesterday, the notion of directionality. So why we want to do something? Because there is a problem, and we have identified a problem, that the problem is sort of developmental in nature, and sort of through entrepreneurship and innovation, we can address and provide some solutions, right? And of course, the diversity of activities. The diversity of activities that that can be understood in terms of application of market principles, but also the value for society is important, not just to create an income, but also to address some specific needs of groups of society. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, entrepreneurs, they have their needs. So of course, when you have an idea, it's not enough to have an idea. You need resources. You need to have the right set of skills, the knowledge. You need to have some sort of friends or family or people who are willing to go with you, sort of your networking and how the enable environment. So do you have infrastructure? Do you have the access to the resources that you need? Of course, what we discuss, and later on my colleagues will talk about, creating this idea of entrepreneurial, the culture. The entrepreneur is identified as a valuable entity in the society, and particularly the one that through innovation and creativity creates some value, right? So is regulatory framework conducive? So all these different ways of, the environment in which these entrepreneurs work, it's important in terms of being conducive or actually preventing some of these activities. Of course, and we will see some of the discussion tomorrow in terms of the instruments when we have the intention to promote entrepreneurship. There are many different ways. There is not just one way of addressing the challenges and the opportunities of entrepreneurship. There's issues of finance, right? Resources is a very common obstacle, but there are ways of addressing that through debt mechanisms or angel investors, risk capital. Now with the emergence of digital technologies, of course, you had things like crowdfunding and other activities that are emerging and also creating opportunities for these entrepreneurs. So organizational skills, like human capital, and the sort of course, understanding of the market and networking and understanding. And sometimes we have colleagues from WIPO talking about the importance of intellectual property rights as a major factor determining the possibilities of creating this dynamic of innovative entrepreneurship, but also tax regimes and regulation are important factors to consider, right? So let me just quickly, and I have just a few more minutes just to give a sense of how does this look in practice. When we were developing our industrial development report in 2020, we were trying to understand some cases, some examples where we can see some of these dynamics of entrepreneurship happening in real life, right? So we found, particularly in the context of these ideas of for the industrial revolution, and we found a very interesting case in the Basque Country where they have a very interesting model of development, heavy industries and companies that produce machinery for other companies, but they also found themselves in a sort of big companies, very well positioned, but moving very slowly in terms of tackling some of the new dynamics of the technologies. And they also had challenges in identifying ways to internationalize, right? So through the smart specialization strategy that is driving some of the strategies around innovation in the European Union, the Basque Country created a sort of a new strategy that is called advanced manufacturing, and this idea of the Basque Country, Basque Industry 4.0, right? The BIND 4.0, which identified some of the priorities that they have in terms of creating new products, new processes, but also helping their companies internationalize and creating some space also for the local environment to improve their ability to attract new companies, new ventures. So where they created this kind of, many of you have seen programs around startups and incubators. What is interesting here, and also you will see some cases tomorrow, how this idea of targeting some of the new technologies eventually created the space for understanding that not all the entrepreneurial drive would come from within. So what the government did is through these associations, the cluster development is very important for the Basque Country. Through this cluster association, they were started to identify companies who would try to be able and willing to test with them a new business model, and attracting solutions for their problems. But some of those solutions might be found by interacting with companies abroad. And so they created this sort of contest or sort of initiatives where they invite proposals from abroad, from small companies, from startups who might be looking for the first contract. So that the Basque company, the big Basque company would act as the contractor. So they would provide the first contract for up to 150,000 euros. But also establish some networking and ensuring there's some demand for the product, while the government would provide some specific activities to support the creation of business creation, understanding the dynamics of the Basque Country, the market, what the company can find there, and so trying to also attract the attention of these companies to come and to the Basque Country and set shop there, so to expand the economic activities within the Basque Country. And so what you can see is that since 2017, it started maybe with around 40 or so projects, eventually 40 companies. Eventually now it's more than 160 companies over the course of 5 years, from 22 to more than 56 companies that have been supported using more than 80 countries. Some of the venture clients of big companies went from a few to now more than 65, and of course more than 240 projects. So this is something that I think is an interesting way how to combine different instruments, and you will talk about instruments tomorrow, to foster entrepreneurship, and particularly, specifically, the innovative entrepreneurship. And one of these things that is important for us is that also some of the learning from this kind of model is being now translated in some other countries, like in Mexico, where you can see a region also in the northern part of the country where this model is also being adopted. And so it is also a very similar pattern, that's the heavy industry in Mexico now, identifying ways to make sure that the local companies interact with some smaller but more dynamic companies than they can be. I mean, at this moment, because of their structure or their experience and exposure to some of the technologies. So I would invite you to sort of look at these cases, but I would also like to now invite you for having a bit of a conversation around your own experiences. And maybe, Segmei, if we can post the first question, the Mentimeter question, then we will have a discussion, but just to make sure that, so 2 quick questions. If you can please go to the chat, and there is the Mentimeter link, just the way we did yesterday. Just you click the link and you will find the options. Please give us two of the main drivers of innovative entrepreneurship in your country, right? So I spoke very generally about the drivers of innovative entrepreneurship, but yes, so this idea of necessity, right? Many people, are not employed, and so they really need to find sources of income, right? So what happens is that many times, do you see many of these? Identifying the innovative entrepreneur is not as easy, right? They also need to have some incentives, they need to have some space. So I can see still, as we get along the answers. Yes, I mean, I see there is while we are answering the question, but also I see a question in the chat. Yes, if you see, I would be happy. I mean, there is that link. There is I will give you the link. There's a report where you can map some of the companies, not necessarily a map, but there are some reports where you can sort of track some of the countries that have been contributing. India, some of the countries in Africa, but I don't have the numbers, the name. Then I will check for those. But yes, you can see the countries. But in terms of your answers here, basically you have necessity and market opportunities. Yes, I don't see much of collaboration with universities, which is an important aspect to consider, right? Business incubators, yes, of course. Government policies, yes, and that's a part of the reason why we are here today, right? And technological opportunities. Okay, I see many more of you, but not many of your answers. But let's move on. Some of you are answering in the chat. Please try to look for the link. So now, as we ask about the opportunities, let me ask you about 2 of the possible challenges. And so, in your views, which ones might be the most important that you're, can be found in your countries that affect the impulse of innovative entrepreneurship? Yeah, so funding, as I was mentioning earlier, there is usually the lack of resources, particularly financial resources. But as you can see, also, support mechanisms, regulation, human resources is very, very important, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of ideas. In the end, you need someone to help you, right? to do things for you. And so many times, really, the entrepreneur is a person, but to create a business that is important to find additional resources. I can see a lot of funding, and we can see later on some of the cases. This is more balanced in terms of your readiness. Yes, sometimes the technology is there, but it's not necessarily that people are ready to use it, which is connected to perhaps to the lack of human resources, or because many times, as I saw in the previous slide, this question is there is not much of interaction with universities, which can help translate the knowledge between the technology into the application, or the knowledge that the entrepreneur needs. Or some of the entrepreneurs themselves are people from universities, but they don't have the space or the room. That's not recognized as such, but still funding is the main mechanism. So I would sort of leave it now, and maybe if there is still time for a discussion, I'll be happy to address questions. Otherwise, Ludovico, you let me know if we move on to the next presentation.
You still have a few minutes. You have a few minutes still, Fernando, for a discussion.
Okay. So I would be happy if
there is already a question on the chat regarding this geographical distribution of
yes.
The firms. But I would invite all the participants to ask more questions now. We have about 5-6 minutes before we start with the next presentation. So please ask questions, raise your hands, and ask the questions you need. Thank you.
As I said, there is no necessary, I mean, there is not a map. There is a, let me see if I can give you I will give you the link to the program, the BIND program, and there's some reports there where you can trace a bit of the story, how many started in 2017 and how many they have now, and the areas in which they work and how they work. I mean, there's also, this is all connected to the vast context strategy around Industry 4.0, around digitalization and internationalization in the context of the smart specialization. So, yes, so I mean, sure, please, if you feel it's easier for you to place your question in French. That's also possible, and we can try and answer. But I mean, what I found interesting is that none of you mentioned that universities were important drivers of innovative entrepreneurship, which I mean, it's a very telling, or at least it's a question why. Why do you think this is not? Is there any particular constraint? I don't know if there's anybody who has an idea why universities, in many other advanced countries, universities are actually one of the places where you can find a lot of these people. Scientists who eventually find a way to capitalize on the technologies, their knowledge, and then create their own venture. Yeah? So why you think probably this is not the case in your region? Of course, and that opens a lot of issues for discussion. But I mean, it's an interesting point that you stress the lack of role for universities. No, I don't see much questions. I don't know if. Okay, I can see here that universities are a platform for innovation. However, startups should be encouraged. Yes, I mean, that's many of the startups start from the universities, right? Of course, what happens is with the universities, they go through the initial processes of developing ideas, developing business models, developing or testing the technologies and the business plans. But of course, what we need is then the next step is when those companies need to go and test the market, and then there's the asset test, or this value of that, and they need to cross that. That's where then we start asking questions whether the environment around them is conducive. I can tell you, for example, many years ago when I was in Mexico, and that's maybe you would excuse me because that's the country I know best, but some of the challenges they had, for example, to attract foreign students in one of the provincial universities is because there was no really a regulation how to do with it, how to treat them, right? How to language requirements and things like that. So also that you need to think of, you push universities to create the startups or incubators, but what else you need once, you have to really build the chain from the university research to the incubator to then the jump into the market, or what's happening in the market, right? Yes, what happens in the first 3 years is important because that also enables them to test, right, and see to what extent they have chances for success in the market. Sorry, Ludovico.
No, I just wanted to encourage participants to raise their hands in the Zoom so that they can also intervene during the meeting. You have options in the chat. You can raise your hands, and you can say it in French or in English. We can translate and support any of these options.
a case that might be interesting for you to learn from in Colombia, that is in Medellin, which is this incubator called Ruta N, which is actually an initiative that coming from, this was a province that was popular not because of their entrepreneurial activity, but because it was, conflict and some sort of drug dealings, right? So they started processes, the private sector started pushing for some change. And so they created all these initiatives, and also a very interesting case on how private sector can partner with governments to sort of change. And this is in the scope of a city that is, sort of mid-sized for a country like Colombia, but also with some potential, but, with some kind of reputation to deal with. So it really this partnership and how to move along, and private sector partnering with some of local universities and eventually finding ways to create a positive dynamics. And it's been kind of successful. Now they were also moving with the help of the World Economic Forum to test some of these centers for Industry 4.0 and digital technology. So it really just also means that you have to be dynamic in terms of how you plan the development also of your incubator. The incubator needs to be a living being, right? Evolving together with the companies that they are supporting.
Fernando,
and how the market is changing.
Fernando, there's some comments in the chat regarding the supervision of startups in the early period of start of, yeah. There's some comments also on the
legislation. Yeah, the
legislation, limiting legislation. Yeah. Maybe you can address some of these issues.
Yeah, just as I said, there's some of the issues on the 3 years. I mean, there's much more companies that go through incubators than the ones that really survive. And that's basically because, I mean, as I said, not all ventures need to be successful. What I think is also important, of course, as a policymaker, you would like to see many of those companies that go through the process of incubation to graduate and to grow. That we know that is not necessarily the case for what I was mentioning earlier, in terms of then what is the next step for them. Once they move away from the incubator, they're still in a very vulnerable situation, right? So you need to start asking questions around what is that the next step. Is it capital? Is it now testing some of the, even more the product, or is market opportunity? So what is it that happens? But it also needs to be understood that even with that support, many of these ventures will not be successful. What you can still find of value here is that, many of these things also build on experience. Many of the entrepreneurs are not necessarily going to develop into the unicorns, right? These companies that go from small firms, from a startup, to the $1 million selling entrepreneurship activity. But, what is important is that the entrepreneur, is also testing, is also learning. Many of the entrepreneurs are very good scientists or very good engineers with very good technical skills, but with no business experience. So even for them, going through this process can be of value. So it would also be interesting to see how many of them go for the second round of trying something, right? So it's not that this is the first time and that you do something and then you are successful. Of course, we would like to have that, but it's also a learning by doing experience, right? So it has to be a bit of experimentation on the side of the government. And of course, yes, the regulatory framework, for example, how easy it is for a person to open or close a company is going to influence the ability for them to grow, to go from the idea into the market, right? If that is already an obstacle, then of course you are killing the idea even before it's really materialized, no?
Okay, Fernand, just a last comment here on what about limiting legislation on environment that limits entrepreneurship? It's a question here on cadre législatif contraignant. I suspect that they mean it, that what they're trying to say is legislation that doesn't allow for entrepreneurship to blossom, etc. How do you address that problem? What should be done there?
I mean, it will depend exactly on the nature of the issue, right? But for example, I can imagine in some cases, and that's what happened in the US, no, with the patents allowing some universities to take patents, also to be able to give the researchers a sense of protection of their ideas. Of course, there's a trade-off here between public goods from the universities and technologies, but sometimes this, I mean, that's why we say, like, our colleagues from why where we just want to explaining the importance of intellectual property, right? The nature of, as I mentioned, the easiness to open or close business, or to what extent these entrepreneurs can find some support from the tax system, right? If it's a, this is a risk venture, and of course, many of them would not have the collateral that they need, right? And if you charge it even more, then that could be even more constraining, right? So it's not just about the lack of resources, but it's just the few resources that these companies might have are heavily taxed or heavily, there's a lot of constraints for them to mobilize.
Okay, Fernando, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I will now, let me see, not starting. Okay. Okay, thank you, Fernando. Right, I will now try to move to the next presentation, which is a presentation by Nivali Dali from ESCWA. She's going to focus on issues related to entrepreneurship in the Arab region. And I'm sure she has some very interesting points to make. Nival, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ludio, and I'm happy to participate, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me share with you my slides. Is it fine? I think it's fine.
Yes, it's working now.
Okay, great. Okay, my presentation will be about enabling technology-driven entrepreneurship in the Arab region. And this is a topic of high importance for the Arab region, according to our, as we have, I'm not able to go to the next slide.
Click on the screen, and maybe that's how you can.
Yeah. Sorry.
Press on the mouse too, that can work.
Yeah, it's not working. Anyway, I will try anyway.
Next.
No, next, just click next.
Next.
Yeah, next. Okay. In fact, this is of a great importance according to what is happening in the Arab region. Just some facts about the Arab region. Let me say that there is, in many Arab countries, there is youth pulse as well as brain drain, and especially for countries which are under crisis today. In addition to that, there is Arab youth unemployment is very high in the Arab region. It's around 30%, and this is really among the highest in the world. In addition to that, we can witness that in the Arab region, it's the unemployment. It's not only for uneducated people, it is also for educated people, and even it is it's even worse in this case, because they are, of course, educated people will not accept any kind of employment. Therefore, I mean, there is a huge problem, I mean, that we are witnessing in the Arab region concerning youth. In addition to, consequently, the participation of Arab youth in the labor force is very low, and especially among women. And we know, according to some statistics, the Arab women total labor force participation rate in the Arab region is the lowest in the world, in our region, among the world regions. Therefore, there is something that we have to do, and among the issue that we are trying to address is really to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship as one of the solutions for this unemployment. At ESCWA, we have launched a kind of policy dialogue about innovation and entrepreneurship with all stakeholders through some of our publication and through a lot of dialogue and interaction between us and the decision makers in the Arab region. Of course, in this discussion, we included some entrepreneurship themselves to say their point of view. We made some kind of publication related to this topic, either innovation and entrepreneurship, and I will share with you some of the findings of these publication or this knowledge that we have witnessed. The first, for example, one of the publication, it was about innovation and technology for sustainable development, and this was targeting the SDGs and so on. But I mean, of course, it is targeting also youth unemployment in the Arab region. In fact, in addition, in this publication and this study, we have looked at all the different innovation model and innovation approach that are available in the world. And of course, we know that there are many innovation models which are top-down approach, like the linear innovation or mission-oriented innovation, which are really coming from the research and development. Initiated by research and development either in research center or in universities. But however, there are other models of innovation which are bottom-up approach, which are these models are not really very well highlighted in the Arab region, and therefore we wanted to really highlight these models which are maybe relevant to our countries and relevant to the sustainable development and to the needs, such as grassroots innovation, social innovation, inclusive innovation, frugal innovation, and then we have highlighted the importance of this innovation and the need to include them in the public policy and in the STI policy and the strategy that are developed by government and decision maker. And that government and decision maker, they should also embrace this kind of innovation in their policy and the strategy and not leave it to the market alone. I mean, as there are some legal and regulatory framework, for example, to be enhanced and to be developed in better way. Among the recommendation, there are many recommendations out of this study. Among them, there was, I mean, and the recommendation were discussed, as I mentioned, with decision maker in the region. There is a need to stimulate the adoption of a new technology in economic and social development. There isn't enough knowledge about how the technology will help and will support economic and social development, especially with the emerging technology that we have. There is also a need to establish incentive financing measure. We have seen in the multimeter question that funding is really very important. Financing mechanism is very important for our region. In addition to that, there is a need to support national innovation system in general and building it in robust way, and also to incorporate the different innovation mechanism or innovation model within these systems. There is also a need to have a specialized institution to support entrepreneurship and to support the innovation in general and entrepreneurship in particular. This is in order to stimulate and to help the grassroots innovation, specifically in different cities and different regions in the Arab region. Another study, we looked at the challenges and opportunity of innovation and entrepreneurship, especially for Arab women, for Arab youth and women. And through this study, we identified the challenges and unfortunately, there are many challenges for entrepreneurship. Some of them are related to the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in general. Some of them are related to technological readiness and technology absorption capacity. I mean, there is maybe people are users of technology, but they don't produce enough in technology. There is, of course, shortage in financing mechanism and also in education on entrepreneurship. And this is maybe some of the challenges specific to the region, that there isn't enough education about entrepreneurship during the different level of education curricula. Another challenge, it's doing business environment, as Fernando was saying, opening company, closing company, other legislation related to the entrepreneurship. Based on these challenges, the discussion among decision makers, we found that there are many recommendation that's out of there, and there is a need to implement a kind of regulatory framework that favored entrepreneurship. From one side, there is a need to integrate comprehensive entrepreneurship education in national curricula. This is really very important. We have seen there are only a few universities who adopt entrepreneurship curricula, especially in business school, but not in engineering or in other branches. And here, I mean, this is general to the Arab region, maybe not specific to each to one country. There is a need to enhance the entrepreneurship potential in advanced technology also, because technology offers a lot of opportunity today. The need also to look at social entrepreneurship and as it is not very well recognized in the society and even in the regulatory framework. And also there is a need to have a kind of some digital platform and content that support entrepreneurship during their journey, as it is maybe today at the hand of everyone and everybody can benefit out of it. Based on all of this, in fact, our ESCWA Technology Center, which is based in Amman and it is part of ESCWA, it was decided that we focus on working on entrepreneurship and SMEs in the Arab region. And by SMEs here, we think about startups and how we can support them and help them in order to advance in their journey at the national level or even at international or regional level. Our ESCWA Technology Center, I mean, they focus on working on different layer and in different pillar for supporting entrepreneurship, and they have a specific conceptual approach. This conceptual approach, it includes 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are, the first is promoting open applied knowledge, then to support the knowledge among a young entrepreneur or potential entrepreneur, and also encouraging the local technological capacity. I mean, because we believe that technology will support and will help these young entrepreneurs, and also to encourage the implementation of appropriate technology, not necessarily the most advanced technology or the most expensive technology, but the sometimes appropriate and normal technology might be very suitable for some region. And also to advocate the 4th pillar, it is advocating local and regional enabling environment. And this is very important. We believe that enabling environment should be really looked at carefully in many countries. So based on a dialogue between ESCWA Technology Center and different stakeholders on entrepreneurship in the Arab region, we have identified a kind of technology-driven entrepreneurship journey. And this journey, I mean, it is really, in a way, it is normal. It's in line with international journey, let us say, in this regard. Okay, start by identifying national demand. There is a need also, the second step in this journey is to inspire and educate innovator. The third step is to develop local solution. And the 4th step is to look to commercialization and incubation that are very much needed. The 5th step is the registration and certification of the product and of startups. And also the 6th step is to have a kind of business support and networking that are needed for any startup. And the last, which is also very important, is scaling at the internationalization of a startup or entrepreneur. Based on this, I mean, we, ESCWA currently is supporting in some of these area, and especially we have developed a kind of knowledge base, knowledge related to this domain to support entrepreneur in their journey. We have a kind of platform today, digital platform called Depart, and it's include a lot of material and supporting knowledge for enhancing entrepreneur in the Arab region. It is open for everyone. We have a kind of compendium of technology. We have developed a kind of guidelines and reports about the use of technology in specific fields and the specific sector, which are very much needed for sustainable development, like agriculture technology, renewable energy technology, or technology for sanitation and for sanitation sector. In addition to this knowledge, we have a kind of capacity building, either workshop either at national level or at regional level. In addition to that, there is a package that we are trying to support member Arab country or entrepreneur by preparing a kind of maps about the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in the different country. We made it either for the country as a whole, for specific sector in a country. Then we have tried, because some specific sector are of crucial importance in the region for the development of this sector, then we choose to make this ecosystem also roadmap and ecosystem for the ecosystem of this sector for entrepreneur. In addition to that, we have a kind of package also for supporting the scaling up and internationalization of entrepreneur. And here we provide them with some opportunity in specific developed country, like for example, Germany or France. What are the opportunity for young entrepreneur in the region to grow, maybe not in their local market, but abroad. And then either in the specific country, or also sometimes we focus in some area, we focus on specific area, on specific sector, like the opportunity, for example, in energy and in agriculture. In addition to that, there are some information about conferences which are open for young entrepreneurs in the Arab region. Finally, I will end by our latest news, and which is we are preparing we are organizing the first Arab SMEs Summit from 30 October to the 1st of November. This summit, it is really, normally it is quite important. We believe that it will be helpful for our, for entrepreneurship in general in the Arab region, as it includes policy dialogue segment among decision makers in the Arab region. And there is also capacity building workshop for entrepreneurs themselves. In addition to that, the summit it will aims to access to support SMEs to access regional and international market, and also to mobilize the diverse financial resources. For that reason, there is a kind of opportunity for interacting with a number of business people, a number of investors in the region who will participate also in this conference. The summit normally will bring together, normally there is 600 participants from different backgrounds, and there is about 20 main sessions and 10 side events. And with that, I thank you, and I hope that it was clear.
Thank you very much, Nibal. You we're more or less in time, which thank you very much for that. Now, actually, we have already an interesting question in the chat for you. It relates to public procurement, and the question is, what is the role of public procurement in entrepreneurship, and could it accelerate entrepreneurship? And how would you go about using public procurement, for instance?
Yeah, yeah, this is very important question, by the way, because I mean, there is some struggle in for a young entrepreneur to be really to enter in any competition opened by the government in the countries and various countries, because I mean, they don't have necessarily the background or the package enough competitiveness, let us say, to compete with big established private sector. And this is really very important, because they don't have enough experience, they don't have enough success story in the background, and they cannot compete, and when they apply they are rejected. And there is today, I mean, there is some trial, or there are some movement that we are trying to push. And here the legislation will play a very important role, that to open the competition for any public procurement to entrepreneurs who have not necessarily enough background or enough experience in the field, and they haven't yet demonstrated that their solution are appropriate for the specific request by the government. Then there is, I mean, now, I mean, a lot of talk among decision makers that we have to find a way to let these entrepreneur or startup enter to the competition. And there are some countries who are started. I mean, I cannot say that it is implemented in many countries, but it is there is some thought about it, and there are some thinking, according to my knowledge, that it is, we would like to open it, and we would like to find a way to encourage them to enter to the competition. Then I believe this is very important question, and thank you for raising it. But I believe there is a kind of there should be in any competition room for entrepreneur to enter. And here I don't know, maybe Dimo, he is raising his hand, maybe he has something to answer as well to that question.
Thank you. Before we move into Dimo and Santiago, and Fernando, there is a question in the chat regarding the role of FDI. What will be the role of FDI in supporting entrepreneurship in the Arab countries?
Yeah, FDI, it is very important also to have FDI in the country in order to and to include, I mean, FDI in general, when it comes to any country, I mean, it will open many new avenue, let us say, for development and for development for entrepreneur. Then there is, I mean, in this regard, I mean, FDI will normally could how to say improve the environment of investment in the country. And if it is well played by the government, that the government put some rule for encouraging entrepreneurship by these investments, it will be really very good. I believe that, for example, Egypt, they have imposed some rules for the investor coming to employ, for example, local people, or for encouraging local entrepreneurs to participate in these investments. Then I believe the regulation is, and when the FDI come to any country, there is a lot of room for the entrepreneur to benefit out of it, especially if the government put in place the rule and regulation that are appropriate for these entrepreneurs or for these FDI.
Thank you.
What I have to say.
I want to encourage all the participants to please raise their hands or use the chat to ask your questions. Dimo, you had a question here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Ludo. Of course, when we have been doing our policy views over the years, we always ask, how much is public procurement involved in stimulating demand for innovation? And of course, there are varying answers. One of the components that is absolutely missing, but is extremely present in a developed country context, and it doesn't translate in developing country context, and I don't see why not, is that one of the key procurers in any country is the military. And whenever we've approached the STI ministries or the ministries that have the STI mandate in any of the countries in which we work with, they all of a sudden shy away from, oh no, we cannot, they are an island of itself. And I think this is something that has to do with very high level policy, cabinet level, presidential level policy, to kind of make the point that, you know, the military, which provides national security, is just another public service, and they of course need to participate in the STI ecosystem and avail their procurement capacities to local firms and entrepreneurs as well. And I'm not talking about weapons, I'm talking about all the other stuff, IT, engineering, logistics, etc., food, I don't know what. So this is something that everyone needs to consider. You know, why doesn't the military, as an important public service providing security, not participate in the STI ecosystem? This is one thing. There are others. Public health can be another one, and so forth. There is an interesting issue here, and that is that when you look at the ITC, the ICT and the digital sector, these are sectors that somehow never fit into procurement policy. Procurement policy, when you read procurement calls in many countries, they require these track records, and you have to have, you know, some kind of, you know, capital. It's like everyone's building a hydroelectric plant, you know, and the same rules will apply for someone providing digital services, or they're building an airport. And this is clearly not the case, especially in knowledge heavy, in sectors that are very much knowledge based instead of hard technology, machines and cranes and bulldozers and stuff like that. Perhaps the procurement policies need to be revised with some view to actually what applies to whom and why, and what is the actual purpose. And in this sense, you know, we always recommend that countries that engage in STI policy do a policy audit, and in particular with a view to procurement policy, and does it actually play a role. All countries who have had successful use of STI policy and innovation in advanced their economies have had very clear procurement policies that have come to the assistance and have facilitated entrepreneurs, local and so forth. From the FDI point of view, it's a very interesting question, but the key here is that FDI will interact with other firms and entrepreneurs who have a certain level of absorptive capacity, so that they can relate to them. So from a national policy perspective, the focus clearly needs to be in supporting entrepreneurs, firms, industries, SMEs, medium-sized, micro enterprises in developing their technological absorptive capacities, rather than legislating local content. In fact, as far as I understand, maybe things have changed. I'm not following WTO very closely recently, but it used to be that local content prescriptions were not forbidden but discouraged, and they were open to challenges. So local content from a legal point of view is not something that the WTO has been supporting, and most countries that we actually are dealing with are members and have signed up to WTO agreements which discourage or even outright ban, at least that was in the past, maybe it has changed now, local content provisions. Everyone is tolerant about that, but it is not the case. So I stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before we move on to your answer, Nival, there is one question on the chat by Mohammed Mayel. What is the role of the state in opening markets for startups? Should it have a dominant role, a key role, or should it have a more secondary role?
Yeah,
to some extent you have addressed it when you talk about procurement, but what should be, to what extent should it?
Yeah, I mean, for that reason, we are reiterating the issue of legal and regulatory framework. Regulatory framework is a key, I mean, for the young entrepreneur. And I understand that there are many people, there was many questions related to this aspect, because, I mean, it is a key, and government has the most important role in this regard. Of course, I mean, other stakeholders can initiate the discussion with the government and can discuss and ask the government to move and to open up. And this is really a key. I mean, they have the most important role in legal and regulatory framework, the government themselves. The other stakeholder, I would say that they have to initiate, as I mentioned, initiate the discussion, propose solution, give some case study or examples from other countries, what they have done. I mean, as we international organization will support in general by giving some justification on how to do things. But I mean, the government had the key role in opening up the market for startup for sure. I mean, I believe this is my opinion in all cases.
Fernando Santiago has raised his hand. Please, you can intervene now.
Yeah, just very quickly on this issue. I mean, of course, I mean, what public procurement is one of them, but you also have the investment promotion agencies, right? Who are now, you know, organizing fairs, organizing missions so generally to support businesses. So one of the activities can be targeting the startups, but also, I mean, it's very interesting. Also, what is the strategic positioning? Do you want these companies to be focusing solely on the local market, or you can also to export? I mean, one of the models I remember, the one thing to incubate, and there's other things like accelerate, right? And so many, I mean, some cases I remember in Mexico, you have, for example, the embassies or the consulates, and they were also, you know, there is an attaché, a business attaché, right? And so Mexico, they developed this program where they started, you know, looking for companies who were already with some kind of exporting experience. Maybe they were small, but they were, you know, dynamic. They were showing some, and so that what they would do is they target them and then go and actually see, okay, if you are in Canada, you're already exported to Canada, what else we can do to support your development in the market? So they would start, you know, using the foreign missions to also promote and foster. So there is an accompaniment, a process of coaching these companies to really now, you penetrated the market, but now you want to grow. So, you know, there's all different ways of the government we can do. Procurement is one of them. I mean, as Nimo mentioned, procurement, I mean, one of the ways you see is not about, so you specify very clearly what you want for the product. You just want a solution. I have a problem, I want a solution. And so that creates a different dynamics of the competition. Of course, we're talking about government capacities also, and not only just the technologies, it's also how a government can run these processes. So yes, I think the answer is yes. There are different ways governments can foster markets through investment promotion, innovative procurement, through venture capital, through even just one of the things that you can see in countries is creating a country brand, right? So because many of the companies lack the reputation they need, the quality reputation, so what you do is, many countries have now this local brand that, has some kind of support from the government. I remember also, again, Mexico, some of the small producers in agriculture, they of course didn't have the reputation, so the government would sort of use some of the public research centers to actually use the positioning they have to then assist in the development of the markets for these producers. So there are many different ways of doing it. It's just also questioning to what extent the governments are ready to engage in some kind of processes that also demand some new skills by the public servant. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Yes, we have a range of options here. I would add to those one supplier development programs that can be done either by the public sector, initiated by the public sector, or by the private sector itself, where you build the capacity of smaller enterprises and create startups to supply to your companies. Okay, thank you very much, Nival. On that note, we will stop here, and I will now move to Alexei, who's going to now tell us a bit of the relationship, the interaction between technology and high tech and startups and entrepreneurship on the basis of the experience of UNIDO, I understand. Alexei, the floor is yours. Please remember the timing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. Yep. Okay, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alexei Savrasov, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I would like to, first of all, thank the hosts for giving me this opportunity to present here today. Today, in the next 15 minutes, let's look at types of interventions that UNIDO performs to see what needs of entrepreneurs by following what Fernando just said. Entrepreneurs, the main agents of economic activity within national business system and national innovation system, can be met, and with what instruments those needs can be met. We will see that entrepreneurs need, first of all, information, the knowledge on the national business system around them. They need knowledge about technology and about the opportunities that this technology can bring to their businesses, but also how much will it cost to implement and use this technology for their operational and upgrading development needs. We'll see that by using the technology, small enterprises in developing countries can move from mere survival to development and growth. And then we will look at what a three-level intervention can offer to SMEs, their employees, agencies and institutions of economic development within the national business system. We here at UNIDO strongly believe that digital transformation of industrial activities plays an important role and represents a key pathway through which industrial sector and entrepreneurs can see considerable improvements in their competitiveness in order to become sustainable. Let us look at the cases. Coming from the needs, again, following what Fernando mentioned in the presentation, the need for information and knowledge. As Nibal just underlined before me, it is very important to have a clear picture of the innovation ecosystem, its main players, interlinkages, sources of finance, current infrastructure, skills, and modes of support of entrepreneurship within the ecosystem. This particular UNIDO project, the regional studies, is looking from the regional point of view, is looking at the role that digital transformation and for industrial revolution related technologies play in the innovation ecosystem of the region. The outcome of this project, or the deliverable of this project, which is the report, will provide information to our member states and to entrepreneurs within the member states on such elements as skills and capacity building, digital transformation at firms level, how digital technologies are implemented, the innovation ecosystem itself, partnerships, investment and infrastructure, governance and innovation policies, like my predecessors, the speakers before me just mentioned. The studies are accompanied by two complementary projects. The data set of 80 innovation indicators collected from 20 different sources, and the government's map, which will allow entrepreneurs and policymakers to see the main players within the ecosystem, but also determine the sources of finance, which we already mentioned at the presentations before me, and modes of support from economic development and supporting institutions. And of course, these studies will facilitate and promote the dialogue on the usage of the latest technology among the member states and among the entrepreneurs. Next is another instrument or tool that is driven by entrepreneurial need, as Fernando just mentioned. What do entrepreneurs need? They need to understand what technologies are available for digital transformation, but also what is cost benefits of these implementation of these technologies. The reason why we developed this particular digital readiness assessment toolkit for small and medium enterprises is the gap, which is evident, especially in developing countries. Entrepreneurs cannot easily access consulting services, consulting companies, as it may be very expensive for them. Therefore, we are proposing this particular solution to support entrepreneurs in this regard. The toolkit will allow firms to match challenges with solutions by performing productivity challenge assessment and Industry 4.0 readiness assessment. How will we do it? Firms will fill in a survey to identify their main productivity challenges, as we call it pain analysis of pains or needs. Then the main challenges will be matched to Industry 4.0 solutions, Industry 4.0 based technologies and applications to solve firms' challenges. Key takeaway here is that we're not just promoting digitalization for the sake of digital or using artificial intelligence. What we are doing here is providing information to entrepreneurs on what kind of technologies are available for their use to transform and make their factories more competitive. This toolkit also informs entrepreneurs of what are the areas that they can use digitalization in and get benefits for them, but also informs about the technologies available for that. Let's move to the next case, next project, project in Namibia, supported by the government of Finland. You see, in Namibia, the vast majority of the population is engaged in agricultural production as subsistence farmers. The project, this project aims to strengthen sources of food and income through processing and converting invasive bush species, using them as biomass to produce animal feed and charcoal for agriculture, livestock, and water management applications. Okay, so this is the typical landscape of an African forest. Plenty of trees, right? But Namibia's landscape today, like in other places, suffers from invasive bush encroachment. What is bush encroachment? It is when a large area becomes enclosed by woody plants as a result of weakened fertile land. So woody vegetation starts dominating the useful herbaceous vegetation, replacing it. In order to address, from technical point of view, in order to address the bush encroachment and help the local entrepreneurs contribute to this task, we have designed and proposed innovative solution to bring back the useful herbaceous vegetation. With this project, we collect the invasive bushes, and then the bushes collected are taken to the container animal feed mill. So they are going through the mill. As you can see, the device is around 10 times smaller than the usual container. In the right-hand side, you can see a closer image of this device. By the way, this is a zero-emission producer of the charcoal. That's the charcoal, examples of the charcoal produced from the bushes. You may ask, what do we, how do we use this charcoal? Okay, the uses, for example, feeding a cow with this charcoal, it increased in its weight by more than 50 kilograms. Then how do we identify the land with invasive species? And this is where the 4 IR technologies come into play. We use satellite imagery recognition and drones to collect data and interpret them through artificial intelligence and machine learning systems. On the right-hand side, those are some examples of the images taken from the land. The health of the land can be analyzed, separating different visual elements. And this helps us to identify which items share the same structure: water, soil, grass, trees, bush, therefore creating different images through prediction models that show us the textural features of the soil and the land. The project then creates value as the campsite. We can quantify the volume and number of those trees. We can also identify the bushes that can be used for the biomass or as biomass. Then we implemented the web application where all the results can be visualized, including the volume of the eligible biomass, thus guiding the harvesters, including the entrepreneurs, towards the bigger concentration of the invasive species, supporting their business efficiency. So to summarize for this project, the project has direct effects supporting entrepreneurs, the productivity in farming, producing biomass for different applications, and it has circular economy logic as the charcoal produced by the biomass is used for animal feeding. It is an example of 4IR technologies: artificial intelligence, big data, satellite imagery, machine learning we use here to support entrepreneurs, improving productivity of agriculture, creating sustainable environment and protecting the soil. Then, next and final project that I would like to put to your kind attention. This is an example from Tunisia and Côte d'Ivoire. The entrepreneurial need here, again, by following the logic of meeting the entrepreneurial needs, well, the entrepreneurial need here, among the others, is access to skilled labor force and access to markets, but also to supporting institutions and finance. UNIDO has designed an approach to address a major socio-economic problem in Tunisia, as well as the complementary country Côte d'Ivoire, namely the high unemployment rates among youth and women. One of the problems lies in the lack of dedicated policy and mechanisms, as well as updated capabilities and infrastructure to benefit from the 4IR in promoting growth and fostering youth employment. The project has started, and it will foster higher demand for skilled workers by addressing constraints on the business side that prevent firms' growth and cluster development. It will support youth and others to engage in these opportunities by increasing access to technology, skills, and information about jobs and business prospects. It will support labor market integration, entrepreneurship, incubators and training structures, and strengthening of financing institutions, of course. In addition, alignment will be sought with the broader framework of relevant national policies. The main goal here is to support Tunisia and Côte d'Ivoire in increasing youth employment, as I said, but income and labor conditions through shaping and consolidating a digital economy ecosystem in the countries. The envisaged wide impact, as we see it, will contribute to a structural transformation of the economy in Tunisia and set the ground for the transformation in Côte d'Ivoire in the targeted sectors, leading to sustainable job creation. Therefore, what we foresee is we will help to create 1,500 decent jobs. We will help 1,500 people to get access to apprenticeship opportunities. 800 people will benefit from better working conditions directly. And 110 entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises will improve their performance. Overall, the outputs that we envisage here is, first of all, enhanced and conducive business environment for employment generation and adoption of the aforementioned 4IR technologies and methods in priority sectors. Then investment promotion network, digital transformation facilitation for attracting investors, partners, finances for acquiring those technologies. Then establishment of a smart factory for 4IR technology adoption and integration in the industrial sector of the countries. Development of dedicated training capacity, of course, the training is one of the pillars. Training on 4IR knowledge in vocational centers, universities, and business schools. Then establishment and strengthening of 4IR institutions and centers for shared training, knowledge, experience, and activities. And of course, we will pilot the adoption and operation of 4IR technologies with selected number of enterprises and entrepreneurs. We usually do a certain number of those interventions, direct interventions on the firm's level. Ladies and gentlemen, the key takeaway here that I would like to pass to you from the brief overview of the examples of UNIDO's work supporting entrepreneurs. First, encourage to employ technology to meet the needs of entrepreneurs. This is what it's for, including the need in information and knowledge, possibilities of future development. Then use technological solutions which can possibly give the move to the next stage of development of an entrepreneur. Because in developing countries, this is something that I would like to stress, sometimes it can literally change lives to move the situation from mere survival to growth and development of small and medium enterprise. We need to then look at the entire innovation ecosystem. Developing countries need support on three-level intervention, which will engage entrepreneurs, economic development and support institutions, finance providers, and policymakers. And of course, we might as well forecast that we need to take into account possible resistance to change. And here my advice would be, of course, pay attention, close attention to it, and go step by step in implementing the technologies. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Alexei. I would like to invite all the participants to, again, raise their hand and ask questions directly in the Zoom, or send their questions by the chat, and we will try to reply them. We have already one question in the chat, and it's a rather interesting question, challenging what you have been talking about. The question is, doesn't fourth industrial revolution technologies and advanced technological solutions lead to the loss of jobs? What is the relationship between employment and technology? You're proposing the use of technology, but doesn't that lead to loss of jobs?
Oh,
And
this is a very, very interesting
address
question. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. We need to look at it in a perspective of a value chain, a global value chain. The thing is, and my colleagues from Research and Policy Department will correct me if I'm wrong, but from what we discovered, and it was in our industrial development report of 2020, the employment, when we're introducing the new technologies, moves further and down and up the value chain. So people's jobs, obviously some of the jobs will be replaced within a specific geographic location or within a specific company, but those jobs will be jobs for those people will be recreated up and down the stream of the value chain, in services, in marketing, in promotion and market access. So the jury is still out, okay? Jury is still out, but the net effect of introduction of the technologies is, as we put it in our industrial development report, is around zero. So in a nutshell, it is a redistribution of those jobs along the value chain.
Thank you. There's another question by Tobias Imala. He's asking whether is there opportunities of partnership in the tech industry? How can, as I understand the questions, how can firms from developing countries or firms from Africa, where the participant comes, can partner in high-tech industries with firms presumably from developed countries? Can partnerships be built here in the area of high-tech between firms in developing countries in Africa and firms in advanced countries?
Okay.
Or within that high-tech industry, within the country, or within countries too. Within countries and with firms in developed countries. How do you build partnerships in the high-tech industry?
There are two ways of looking at it. First is, again, the global value chains, where you, again, by using the latest technology, the access to the market or the access to the niche of the market is easier right now. And again, we showed it in the next industrial development report, 2022. Firms that use latest technologies, they are more resilient and they are more agile. It's easier to find the place within the global value chains. At the same time, how do you build partnership? There are programs, and there is a plethora of economic development agencies that are creating value by the matchmaking of the companies, especially from developing countries, to the companies in the developed world, as subcontractors and as fulfillers of some of the demand of the countries from the developed world. So I'd say there are services that are devoted to this kind of matchmaking for those partnerships to take place, to emerge, and to be fulfilled in reality.
Mm-hmm. Any other question? Issue?
Something about Industry 4.0. Oh, no. Okay, we answered it, yes.
Mm-hmm. Fernando, yeah. Fernando,
I mean,
yes.
I mean, this idea of how to connect companies with high tech. I mean, a bit of the what I mentioned, this Basque Country program. It's that. So it's not necessarily creating the usual customer-supplier relationship. It really is very specific in terms of the technologies, particularly digital technologies. Right? So you are starting to get some of these very advanced companies, because these are companies that produce machinery. It's not just whatever companies, really big companies who are quite sophisticated, right? But they also, the level of sophistication or specialization sort of creates a bit of a barrier for them to move into different areas or to start testing some of the new technologies where they might not have the capabilities, or they also find that, should we do anything? So one way of doing is to create these programs where they develop these startups or these possible customers where they have a problem and they try to find a solution with the help of the governments, right? So it's one of the ways to do that. There's also, for example, I remember in Mexico, sometimes what we started doing back in the 2000s, right, is create. One of the problems is setting up a price tag on the technology, of how to do the technological appraisal, right? And so the idea was to create some kind of layer of experts, people who within experience in the industry, and that to also try to go and help researchers or help some people who have ideas to then link, the small startups, the small ventures, to try and link with a possible market. So these ideas I mentioned, sometimes it's not that people don't have the business experience, but also they don't know how to address some of the legal issues of setting a contract or setting, a mechanism for financing, to how to set a intellectual property on their technology. So, I mean, you need this sort of translator. So you need to already identify why are these companies not being able to, progress in making these connections. So some of those solutions exist, but basically what we're doing here is it's a very peculiar kind of animal, right? So sometimes it's just because they are not known. So then you need to help them create this, as I was mentioning, the branding, the exposure to the market, so that people identify them. And then, of course, you go as a government, so providing some of the support that they need, so that this is possible. So it's sorts of problems, of course. Alexei was talking about the value chain. So it depends on where are you really going to enter within the value chain, in sort of lower segments, or you're going up. Are you talking about connecting companies to do the design, or you're just going to do assembly parts? So it's very different way of negotiating these things, right? So it depends on where you are aiming to enter the value chain. Just a few ideas.
Thank you, Fernando. There's another question here on the chat related to skills, and the question here is, how is it, can raising the level of skills at a regional and national level be one of the solutions to upgrade firms technologically and allow them to enter partnerships with other companies, other high-tech companies or high-tech companies? So what's the role of skills? What's the role of skills, and can it help to upgrade technologically companies?
Yes, absolutely. The skills is one of the several pivotal factors or pillars of the success of such an endeavor. We have digital skills, digital infrastructure, the partnership, as we just discussed, and the innovation itself. So the skills, the innovation is done by the people eventually, and yeah, Fernando is raising the hand, by the people themselves. So yes, one of the pivotal pillars of this endeavor.
Just to continue along these lines, what are the type of skills that firms, SMEs or startups or entrepreneurs need to develop in order to be embrace fourth industrial revolution technology? What types of skills?
As we call them, the digital skills, it's a part of the users and part of the developers. If we are looking at the, the bigger picture and moving again along the value chain, the skills of developers are in high demand and will be in high demand in the years to come, of course. But at the same time, the basic skills of the usage of the technology and servicing the technology. So these are the three groups, if you'd like.
Okay. Fernando, you have a question?
Well, thank you. No, it was more an answer on the previous question on the skills, and if it's enough. Well, I mean, there's in history, right? I mean, you see some of the countries that have managed to develop, they invested a lot on education and creating a very strong knowledge base from, when the time comes, there's a pool of human resources, with qualified resources to go. What we also find recently is that that's not enough. You also need to think of the demand. I mean, like a month ago, I was in one place in Africa, and we were looking at digitalization. And I was also somewhere else in Peru, right? And then we're also discussing, about the issue of skills. And we were looking at graduates in STEM, graduates in engineering. And then we realized that sometimes the problem is not so much in terms of how many you produce. It's really asking the question, what happens with the demand side? Are we supporting companies to absorb these people? Are we producing people to leave the country, right? So because these are people who have high skill, if they don't find a job at home, they find a job elsewhere, or they look for jobs elsewhere. So you need to create this kind of synergetic relationship between, yes, you need to improve your skills base by investing in education, not only in terms of university degrees, but also in technical and vocational education. And one of the challenges there is how to create this perception that vocational education is as equally valuable from a social point of view as a university degree, for example, right? I saw that in Canada. In Canada, you have this very, very elaborate sort of vocational education centers where they bombard you, like, you have when you graduate from here, you have a salary that is at this level, that is equivalent to this level of university education, and we need, so you create this sort of social aspiration for validity of those skills. But also you need to also make sure that your education system is responding to the changing needs of the market. Of course, that's not an easy thing to do, but what it means is you need to start creating some mechanisms to consult your companies, the projects, to what kind of skills are they creating? Are they finding what they need? Or the university system, we know that the education at tertiary level can be quite slow in terms of changing programs, changing, sort of creating new curriculum, right? So it's all sort of, yes, you need to invest in education, but you also need to invest in the absorptive capacity of the market to make sure that those people who are being trained are also able to be retained by the economy and create this space. I mean, it's just not supply driven. Yeah?
Thank you. We have a few minutes for more questions. Does anybody else want to raise a point or a comment or has a questions regarding the presentation just made? More comments? Alexei, let me ask you a question of what as a policymaker, what would be in a nutshell, what would be the approach that a policymaker should take in order to promote high-tech entrepreneurship? What will be the steps and what will be the approach?
So if we put it really in a nutshell, as a policymaker, you will start with mapping out the innovation ecosystem to identify the gaps and the main players, including the universities that do the basic science within the innovation ecosystem. After identification of the gaps, you will go to looking for the partners in the public sector, of course. Then consider the financial considerations, consider development finance for SMEs and entrepreneurs, and consider the support in your country, embassies, UN agencies, development banks. But you start with, yes, you start with looking at the battlefield, if you'd like, from mapping the innovation ecosystem and the main players to identify the gaps of what is needed, what is lacking within it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Well, time to wrap up. Let's just to sum up what has been said today. We have 3 presentations. The first presentation by Fernando Santiago. He essentially puts at the center of the innovation system and the center of developing science, technology, innovation. He puts entrepreneur, and we had this session, the whole session about entrepreneurship. He makes, I think, raises 2 central challenges that have to be taken into account in order to promote entrepreneurship and promote innovative entrepreneurship. First, one has to stimulate creativity within the system. Yeah, so that innovative companies that create new products, transform the economy are necessary. And secondly, from a policy-making perspective, you mustn't only create this environment for creative and innovative companies to emerge, but you must also be able to support them to scale up. Successful companies must not remain small, must grow, must scale up. And the mechanisms, the policy mechanisms to make them grow up must be there too. He says, Fernando also says that it's not only about improving finance and getting better finance for innovative entrepreneurship is important, but this must be supplemented with policies that promote the interchange and the flow of knowledge across the innovation system. Without that, without the flow of knowledge across the system, the innovative firms will not emerge. It is not only about finance, but also about promoting the flow of knowledge in the system. Nival, in talking about the entrepreneurship in Arab countries, she points at the importance of improving the entrepreneurship system. The moment there is not enough effort into raising the quality and the volume of entrepreneurship systems across the countries, and that is a challenge for policymakers at the moment. And she puts emphasis on strengthening the youth, because the Arab countries have a large young population, and it is focusing on the youth that will bring eventually innovative entrepreneurship and sustainable development in the region. And finally, Alexei gives a lot of importance of bringing technology, or providing innovative entrepreneurs with technology, with high-tech technology, with tools, artificial intelligence or other tools that will allow them to achieve their objectives. When doing so, one has to focus on the whole of the innovation system, not only different aspects or parts of it, but to provide tools or try to diffuse all these tools across the innovation system. And he says, whenever you are bringing new technologies, even into an entrepreneurial system, you will face a lot of resistance and resistance to change. So policymakers must be prepared to deal with resistance to change by not only the innovation, the ecosystems as a whole, but also by entrepreneurs themselves. Okay, having said that, I would like now to move on to our 1 Mentimeter question, and that we have also as a close-up of the program for today. The question, maybe I can ask May to put the question online now. You can go to the chat and you can find the question. What is your key takeaway message for session 2? Just one single statement. Oh, that has been your key takeaway message for session 2 for today. See, we still have several participants. Can you just type what okay. Just type one word with your key takeaway. Empowerment. You can do it in French or in English. Great. Some more? Please, just one more. More takeaway messages. We have empowerment, entrepreneurship, and innovation, the role of entrepreneurship, role of SMEs, skills, market environment, any other. Yes, the key role of government in creating market demand. The regulatory environment, finance, economic opportunities, regulation seems to be repeated significantly. Any other? Regulatory environment. Okay. Any more? Anybody else has startups? Good. Okay, there's somebody in the chat also putting entrepreneurs and innovation, legal environment. FDI is a driver of innovation. Role of value chains. Any other comment? Okay. Well, on this note, I will want to thank all of you for participating in this session. It was great to share these 2 hours with you. It's been a pleasure. I would like also to invite you tomorrow at an hour earlier. We start at 2 p.m., not at 3 p.m., but I'm sorry, at 2 p.m. in Central European time, 1 p.m. in Tunisia, for the last of the sessions, which will focus on the design of policy instruments. Today, we focus on one policy instrument, entrepreneurship. Tomorrow, we will focus on how to design several policy instruments and how to combine policy instruments in order to have an SDI, a cohesive and coherent SDI policy. On that note, I want to thank all of you. Thank you very much. And we will see each other tomorrow. Yes, May, you have something to add?
Ludo, can we please ask participants to turn on their cameras to see their faces and take a group photo?
Please, can you all turn on your cameras? We would like to take a group photo. Turn on your cameras, please. You can show your children what you were doing today. Good, thank you. Let me see more cameras, more people show. Switch your cameras on, please. Please switch your cameras. Good, good, thank you. Yeah. So May, are you taking the pictures?
Yes, I'm taking just 10 more seconds, please.
Okay, sure.
It's nice to see your faces.
Yes.
Okay, it's done.
Okay. Does any of the other speakers today want to say anything by way of closing? Fernando or Dimo?
The participants. Yeah, I think Dimo has the closing remark. But for me, just to thank the participants. Merci beaucoup de votre attention.
Again, thank you everyone for coming today. We see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Tunisia time, sharp. Thank you very much, and we're going to have a fantastic session tomorrow as well. See you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.